Hey all, welcome back to another episode of the Texas SignalCast. I'm here with Jessica Montoya-Coggins.
Hello, y'all.
Yeah, and as usual, we are going to talk about the happenings in Texas state politics. This podcast goes out first to our Patreon supporters, so we hope that you'll please join us and consider being a patron. If you're hearing this, it really helps us to do all the great journalism that we do and get the word out. We're really one of the only progressive outlets across the whole state, and so we're really trying to build something special here that's a platform for folks, our new emerging leaders across the state. The big news I think this week was Governor Abbott's new order that he put into place, which rescinds an old order to eliminate the mask mandate. So I think you were following this, Jessica. What's your take on him opening businesses up 100% and removing the mask mandate?
Yeah, last week I was very worried about this. After the blackout and just how disastrous the response was, Abbott was taking a lot of incoming fire even from Republicans. I was like, something bad is coming. And I was like, what would be the worst possible thing for him to do? Rescind the mask mandate. So I knew that was probably going to happen, and that did. So yes, I do. I feel like I am channeling my, Britney Spears, free Britney,
Right.
but my government is killing me.
Yeah, I mean, it really is amazing. I totally agree. Like, you could see him taking heat sort of from all sides. And, he's been under the gun with the power grid outage and the finger pointing. And he's kind of escaped a lot of the harshest criticism. We've been really covering this a lot on TexasSignal.com. But, what Democrats are saying about, who's really in charge here with the power outage. The PUC chair resigned, but she was an appointee of the governor. And the CEO of ErCOT, which the PUC oversees, was just fired. And this is after, we covered this last week, but the hearings where, he basically didn't give testimony that satisfied the members that they were actually going to do anything to make changes or that they accepted any responsibility for what happened. And they asked him how much he made, and apparently he makes almost $1 million a year. And so, you know, folks want answers, but Greg Abbott has managed to essentially avoid the direct accountability. And as soon as these two folks are taken out of the picture, he's kind of the last person. He's the next in line, essentially, in terms of going up the chain of accountability. And then we get this order. Like you said, I think it very much seems to be in order to distract us from sort of that any kind of fallout from that failure.
And
Of
it's very frightening. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in Texas, the frontline workers, teachers, service industry employees. This is threatening their lives. And I know it's sort of up to each store to, either comply with the CDC guidelines, but there's really no enforcement mechanism for them, even if they do require masks. And, we've seen hundreds of videos all around the country of anti-maskers confronting people in places like grocery stores, malls. And I mean, what exactly are you supposed to do? And here in Texas, you have the added threat of like these people could be armed.
Yeah, it could be
So,
dangerous.
so I
Absolutely.
I don't I feel for these employees, many of them making just $7.25 an hour, having to try and confront possibly someone who is threatening their life.
Absolutely. And he's basically putting all this responsibility on each individual. We can say business, but yeah, it's more like what you said. It's more the individual workers who are going to bear the brunt of having to enforce this. And, to me, that's the whole point of the government is to provide this type of guidance. And he's clearly just acting on a political level. There were a poll that came out recently. I mean, his polling numbers had gone down. We saw that after his initial sort of reaction during the pandemic. His numbers took a hit. And then after the power grid, I think he saw this as a desperate move. But I went back and looked at the previous executive order that he put in place back on June 2nd that initiated the mask mandate to begin with. And he said there that the reason that he was doing this was that the COVID-19 virus posed an imminent threat to Texans in every county in the state. Now, what changed between now and then? I have no idea other than this political situation. So did you see him on the news the other day, that interview he did, his KPRC or?
That, yeah, he was very combative.
Yeah,
Normally Abbott, even if he is under strain, he usually maintains like a level of composure. And this was one of the first times, at least in my knowledge, where I had not seen this side of him, and
yeah,
you could tell that he was very much on the defensive,
yeah.
and really had some poor had really no rationale for this executive order.
Yeah, he just immediately blamed illegal immigrants. He said Biden is, he's like, and it was a total deflection from the question. So the reporter said, well, I understand you have a different opinion on immigration, but I'm asking you about the mask order. And he says, no, you don't get it. I'm telling you that Biden is releasing illegal immigrants who have COVID-19 into our communities. I mean, he just kind of like went off the rails. I mean, he was combative and aggressive, and he really struggles to show emotion. And I feel like, he kept doing this with his hand, which was like really weird. You know, I saw Scott Braddock, who's a reporter, a political insider at the Capitol, and he made a comment to the effect of, Abbott's behavior in that video was similar to what he seems to be hearing about how he's talking to his staff, or he at least insinuated that. So, he probably is. It's born out of frustration, but we saw that practice video we talked about last week, where the governor was seen essentially practicing showing emotion because he was going to have to tell, people about what was going on with the power outage. So this is somebody who, has come from a judicial background, who is like a lawyer and a judge, essentially trying to have to recalibrate his approach to like empathize with people in a way that he's never really had to do before, and probably doesn't, but it is part of his role as governor. And if he
I
wants to
also
sit there,
I also think that, he's feeling a lot of threats from other governors, particularly at last weekend's CPAC,
Mhm.
whatever the heck that was. I think Abbott was at 0.01% support for president, and he kind of sees that the governor of Florida,
Yeah,
Ron DeSantis, and the governor of South Dakota, Christy
no,
Nome.
no.
I just call her COVID lady. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, whatever.
But like they're clearly, I think, positioning they and Abbott has, I think, he has 2024 ambitions, and he's sort of seeing these other two governors clearly way far leaps and bounds ahead of him.
Yeah, it does seem to frustrate him that he lost some of that sort of national mojo that he had. It seems like just months ago, people were talking about Governor Abbott, sort of being a national figure. But he's also always, jockeying for that spotlight with Ted Cruz in the state. But obviously he's not seen as super popular right now. But yeah, I don't know. I was pretty frustrated with the number, how high Greg Abbott's polling numbers still are. Uh, it was post Cancun trip in a Texas statewide poll showed 58% still support Greg Abbott, which is, I just find incredibly hard to believe. But it makes sense why he would try to make this pivot now before that number goes down anymore.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know if you were on Nextdoor. The only reason I'm on it is because of the COVID-19. Once God helping, we're past this. I'm done with that. But it was interesting to me. Somebody did post, like a thank God we're done with masks, and about 85% of the replies were like, "This is so foolish. How dare you?" And then only about 15% were, yeah, it's about time. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's
I'm
hard to see.
curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. I mean, well, first, this is again very frightening and a scary situation. But I have to think that this actually might I hope, backfire a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see who, I mean, we know who is happy about this, but that doesn't necessarily translate to them being happy with Greg Abbott. I mean, we saw what Sid Miller posted, and I hadn't really thought about this, but Sid Miller has been attacking Greg Abbott for a while now over the pandemic. I mean, he held a rally with the chair, state party chair, against the governor at his own mansion, telling him to open everything back up. And so when the governor opened up, Sid Miller was like, "Well, it's about time, but this never should have taken this long, and it shouldn't have happened." It wasn't a like hoorah, Governor Abbott, you know. So I'm
And you
wondering.
have a theory about Sid Miller, I think.
I'm starting to think that he wants to run for governor, and it was somebody on Twitter when I like just kind of like tweeted something about this, but yeah, they said, "Oh yeah, he's running for governor or something like that, or he's talking about it," and I was like, "Oh wow, that never crossed my mind," but now it makes a lot of sense why he's been doing that. I mean, can you even imagine? I mean, it's hard to, I think if anything, what it tells us is that Republicans find him a bit vulnerable in their own party, and they see that, and so that's something to consider, to speak of, I think.
Hmm. We will keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and another statewide who we think is particularly vulnerable is Ken Paxton. We talk about him a lot, and he wasn't in the courtroom, but his lawyers were in the courtroom trying to essentially get his latest case of abusing his office thrown out. I don't know if I think you might have been watching some of this, but essentially where we're at now, as far as I know, the latest is that the Judge Amy Clark Meachum, said the show can go on, but their argument was that he should have immunity because he is not a quote public employee, because he is an elected official. But I did go and look it up, and he has a salary of over $150,000. So I don't know why we're paying him that if he's not a public employee.
Correct. And the Paxton is very notorious for these stalling tactics. I mean, it
Hmm.
was 6 years ago he was indicted by a state grand jury up in Collin County for securities fraud, and he has managed to, that trial has been 6 years, and sort of bounced around the state, and it's still kind of in that holding pattern. So no, he is very much someone who has a playbook, and he constantly goes back to it of making sort of these outrageous claims and then using everything at his disposal to evade accountability.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and he's been very good at it. It's one of those things where like, hey, if you're good at it, if it's working for you, I guess you got to hand it to him. He's been successfully evading any type of accountability, and there's been a lot that he's been able to so far get away with.
And he's
Um,
kept up a busy schedule as Attorney General. It was about less than 3 days after Biden took office. He immediately filed a lawsuit to stop a deportation freeze, and was successful in that. Prior to the inauguration, he was leading the charge against the Affordable Care Act, against DACA. He's right now aligning with several Republicans attorneys generals against a Department of Justice nominee, Vanita Gupta. So I mean, to say he's not a public employee is a stretch of the imagination, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, and then there's another public employee who's been in the headlines recently, Dr. Ronny Jackson, who is now a congressman from North Texas, or West Texas, I guess. Do you know anything about that? You could tell us about what's kind of happening with Ronnie?
Yes. So an inspector general's report was released yesterday. Dr. Jackson was a White House medical doctor. He treated President Obama for several years. I think he was in the office starting in 2012. And there were some really serious allegations about his conduct there. And the report, in my mind, is very damning. It shows,
Yeah.
sort of breaks it down, like people who were firsthand experienced his shouting, tantrums, just really unprofessional conduct. And then so it's several people in that category. Several more people sort of had witnessed firsthand other people doing that. He also he was drinking on the job, including 2 trips where he was accompanying President Obama, and supposed to be sort of the on-hand medical care. So this is, I mean, it's very serious.
Yeah.
However, he was still promoted under President Trump, and a lot of people, I think, he gained national traction when he gave a very unhinged press conference saying that Trump could live to be 200 years
Yeah.
old. Um,
Yeah. He's like
I
back.
also just want to point out they definitely lied about Trump's weight. I am sorry. They gave like a weight for him where I was like, I actually started looking up like NFL football players to see like what like the same height and
Yeah.
weight, and
Yeah.
I found someone and I was like, no,
Yeah.
this is
Do you
wrong.
remember what they said he weighed?
It was something like 245 or something,
Yeah.
and he's like,
I mean, he's like 6'4". I mean, I'm 6'4". So, I
and I
mean,
think he lies about that too because he
I mean, it's hard to know when he lies about big things, small things, unimportant things. It's very hard to know. Yeah. Like, and then when his doctor lies, yeah, it's kind of hard. I mean, when I found out that Ronny Jackson was also Obama's doctor, I was like, oh my God, that's so scary. I'm so glad that Obama made it
I'm
out.
like, I hope he found like some outside medical care immediately.
Oh,
But so, and Congressman Jackson now, he has claimed that this is all a hit job, and the deep state is out to get him. I believe his district is either like, it is easily one of the top 5 most conservative in the whole country,
yeah.
and so he has really pivoted and gone into that very, very hard right direction.
Yeah, the Trump world, absolutely, 100%, all MAGA, all in. I mean, Trump endorsed him. I mean, he was seen as Trump's guy, and of course, the opponent, who was pretty bad himself, was trying to out Trump, and you know, but yeah, the thing is, like, what I hope is that I assume this stuff is absolutely true. There's no reason to doubt that it's not true, but my hope is, as a congressperson, there'll be more exposure into his behavior. Hopefully staffers feel more comfortable, and other people who witness that type of behavior will also report it and continue to report it, so that they're new or fresher. If nothing else, just keeps him in check, right? So he doesn't abuse anyone else. um, it just makes me think that, like, staffers at the Capitol probably need a union. I've never really thought about it before, but like, if anybody can benefit from a union, it's Capitol staffers. I mean, the way they're treated,
It's
you
very
know,
true, and the pay too. And this is actually, I
yeah.
think something that Joaquin Castro is very adamant about. That it is just exclusive. It's not fair, where you have if you want to serve, you basically have to be at a certain income level,
Mhm.
and that's just not right.
Yeah, yeah, you
Um,
basically have to have a trust fund that can, like, pay your way while it's almost like going to college again, while you're there as an intern, unpaid or not.
Though
So,
on your point about Capitol Hill unions, Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne is actually starting to attract national attention. She is from the North Texas region.
yeah.
She has had a incredible amount of turnover in her office in such a short amount of time. So I was reading, it was either Politico or another publication where they were pointing that out, and they noted it was very curious, like so early into a term, to have such a tumultuous time
Yeah.
already.
I mean, and she's awful. I mean, former mayor of Irving, anti, Muslim, is how I got introduced to her, when she was mayor of Irving, and just saying some outrageous things about her own constituents. But yeah, and it's just very weird too. She had a staffer commit suicide in front of her home since she's been in Congress. This was a campaign staffer, not a congressional staffer. But it really, I mean, there has to be some connection in terms of her relationship to people that she is in charge of, and the way she deals and manages people, and it's just such an awful thing to have happened. um and given this, what you're saying now, there's clearly, to me, some connection with the way she manages people, and I mean, just listening to the way she says publicly, it's awful. So I just can't imagine what goes on behind the scenes
Yeah,
with
very
somebody.
true.
Yeah, I mean, I think HR 1, the voting rights bill, is one that just passed the U.S. House. And we saw Trump, and you mentioned CPAC. When he was at CPAC, one of the things he mentioned was all the things the state legislature should be doing in order to essentially make sure he can win again, because we're going to eliminate mail-in voting. We're going to eliminate early voting. He called for eliminating early voting, and just a lot of different things that I think some of which HR1 could help to manage and facilitate, that states would not be able to suppress votes by changing some laws. But you noted that there's been at least one bill filed to kind of follow through on these.
Yes, State Representative Jared Patterson, who is up in Denton County, filed a bill. It essentially counters Harris County, which had opened some late night polling sites during
Mm-hmm.
early voting, as well as one 24-hour period. And this was really designed, for a lot of folks that don't have sort of, traditional hours, and particularly hospital employees. This
Right.
was, we are, at the time we were in a pandemic, we're still in a pandemic. And it was, and actually, I think Harris County did a phenomenal job with how they were able to very creatively
Right.
expand voting access.
Yeah.
And, there were 10,000 people, I believe, in that 24-hour window that were able to vote. And who knows if they would have been able to do that if that hadn't been open to them.
Right.
Yes. So, but this bill would have a hard stop of I believe it was 9 p.m. for any evening early voting.
I mean, it's just on the surface, just outrageous. And I don't know if you saw any of the Supreme Court arguments where they were listening to why even Amy Coney Barrett was questioning the Republicans on why they wanted to remove some of these provisions. In this case, it was an Arizona law. And he straight out said, politics is a zero-sum game, and this gives us a disadvantage to the Democrats. So that's why we want to be able to get rid of this rule. So
Yeah, they're not hiding it. I mean,
no, they're not anymore, and they don't have to anymore. And so that's where we're at, unfortunately. And again, that's why outlets like the Texas Signal is obviously so important, and we give a platform for folks who can tell us better. And I know that one of the things that we're going to be doing is hearing more from the Texas Civil Rights Project about how they see the future of voting rights and what we can do. And they get some serious wins in Texas on voting rights cases, like really big, unbelievable wins. Some, I think one of which was a Harris County victory back when they tried to eliminate some of these new innovations that were going on in Harris County. They were there to help protect some of that.
I mean, there was an attempt just to, I believe they had like a drive-through type of voting, and there was an attempt to just throw out all the votes that had
Mhm.
that had happened there. I mean, it was just so unconscionable.
Yeah, yeah. And so also, you just recently interviewed a member of the state house about the state of Texas politics. You want to talk a little bit about plug your
Sure,
podcast?
sure. This is on, we have a couple of podcasts in our Texas Signal family. So I host a podcast called The Tex Mix. So I was able to talk with State Representative Jasmine Crockett. She is up in the Dallas region. We talked literally just a few hours after Abbott's executive order ending the mask mandate. So she was very, very angry about that. She hears firsthand from the frontline workers who are going to be impacted. We obviously were also talking about the blackout and the continuing devastation from that. Her district was very, very impacted in Dallas, and many residents had to go to the Renaissance Hotel, which had a power generator. So she was in her Austin office coordinating, trying to make sure that figuring out, which hotels are sort of on grids that are near hospitals. That's how they sent people to the Renaissance. But also, this was also relating to the, Abbott's executive order. Is 2 weeks ago we had people sort of interacting very close to one another because of this devastation from that winter storm. So many public health advocates were warning that there could be, a surge in COVID-19 cases. So again, this is the absolute wrong time to be doing these measures. But no,
Yeah.
it was a very good conversation. And we also got a chance to talk about some of the bills she's working on. Many are focused on criminal justice reform. She also is on TikTok now. And so it was very, very interesting to hear how she and her staff are using that platform to talk about these bills and why they are so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really cool. I'm gonna have to check out your podcast. I had not listened to an episode of it yet. I didn't realize, how, or when it, when you actually started doing it. But I know I had been hearing that you were doing this and doing some of these interviews, and to me, that's really one of the most exciting things about the Signal is this opportunity to like hear different perspectives from around the state, because one of our problems, I think, as the Democratic Party in Texas is we don't have a brand. We kind of just have the national brand, which doesn't always work here in Texas. And you just, on Twitter, you can look at legislators from South Texas and hear how they talk and what they talk about. And it is very different than what an urban rep from North Texas might be talking about, because I see it. I see a lot more talks about guns and grilling and trucks when I'm looking at South Texas members talking about stuff. So I just think it's really interesting that we have this opportunity to do that. I'm really excited about doing that in the future. So with that, I think we'll just tell everyone, hey, thanks for joining us again on the SignalCast. We appreciate it. Special thanks to our patrons. Follow us on Twitter. We've continued to grow our engagement on Twitter. It's really great, all the feedback we're getting from people, and it's just great to have some of those conversations and to connect with people.
We're also on TikTok, actually.
Yeah, we started the TikTok. Yeah, see, I can't even promote it because I don't even. Yeah.
We're also on Instagram, all the social media channels.
Yeah, wherever you are on the internet, we're right there next to you. So make sure you find us and join the conversation, and we appreciate it very much. And so until next time, later, y'all.
Bye, guys.